name is Alia Kate and I own a fair trade design business specializing in Moroccan rugs and textiles. The business is called Kantara, and in Arabic Kantara means bridge. And I started the business several years ago, I guess back in 2008. And the idea was to be an ethical bridge between Moroccan artisans, women artisans, and customers here in the States. I came up with the idea for Kantara after living and working in Morocco for about a year and a half. Back in 2006, I took a year off of college and I moved to Morocco, and I was working in Rabat, which was the capital city. And while I was there, I traveled to Fez, I traveled to Marrakesh, I traveled to all of the touristy locations on my weekends for vacation, just to get to know the country. And I was starting to see, the touristy side of Morocco and really falling in love with that because it's such a dynamic, vibrant country. I was so curious about was understanding how the other half of the country lived. And so I really wanted to have this experience going to the rural areas and seeing what life was like there. And I had an opportunity to do that. And what struck me when I got to these rural areas was just seeing that in almost every home that we visited, there was a loom set up where the women were weaving, or they were spinning raw wool, or they were washing wool, or they were dyeing it. And so there were these little hints and traces of the Moroccan rug weaving process scattered throughout the homes, and it just seemed like it was such a central part of life there. And so, seeing this part of the industry that was owned by these women in these rural areas, and seeing these beautiful products and beautiful pieces of art coming off of the looms in these very rural areas, but then having that juxtaposed against the bazaars and the Moroccan rug shops in Fez and in Marrakesh, where it was mostly owned and run by men, was an interesting, I guess it was an interesting juxtaposition for me. You're in the rural areas, and that's where the women make and design and create and have full artistic control over the rugs. And then you go to the urban areas, and in the urban areas you see that it's these men that are taking it and selling it and telling you things that are a little bit different than what you would hear in the rural areas from the women themselves, and telling you what the symbols mean or how the wool is dyed. And you start to realize that there's some sort of dissonance between what you know and what you learn from the women, and then what you're being told by these men in the urban areas. And then also just being really shocked to see the price difference between what you understand that the women sell these rugs for in the rural areas, and then what the men sell them for to the tourists in the urban areas. And so it was some of these questions about just about the juxtaposition and the dichotomy between the women producers and the male sellers, and then also the rural areas and the urban areas, and just being really interested and intrigued by the story of these rugs. I think when I first started the business, what I was most concerned about was paying the women a living wage. And because of that, I went directly to the artisans. I had learned enough Arabic. I'd learned a little bit of the Amazigh dialect at that point, where I knew I could go work directly with the artisans. And so for me, it was really important to buy directly from them, so that I knew that I would be paying them a wage that was fair and that would support them in all of their endeavors. And so when I started my business, that was my primary concern. I think more often than not, the women will make the rugs, but it's oftentimes other people that sell them, just because business is still not something that women are, especially in the rural areas. It's where it's culturally appropriate for women to engage in. And so for me, by dealing directly with the women, it was a way to empower them to not only produce the rugs, but also to own that selling process and that business process. And so that was what was really important to me at the point. But I think secondary to that, I've always been interested in using the rugs as a tool as an education tool to share information about the culture and the history and the religion and the politics and the society within Morocco. And I think, we get certain images and we get certain ideas of what that is, and I think especially now that Morocco is so popular and such a popular destination, I think it's very present in people's minds. But I think that people oftentimes don't really see what's happening outside of those really popular touristy cities. This is the map of Morocco, and like the Beni Warin rugs are only from this region here, and this is like the tribal area. But as you can see, like every different tribal region, has a different style of rug. And so the ones that I work with are up here in the Beni Magild area, and then also down here in the Aitwazgiti tribal area. And then I also end up getting a few rugs that are of the Galawi style. As you can see, each area, these are all the different tribal areas within Morocco. There's so much beauty and history, and there's a narrative in the rugs that's woven into the rugs, and it's really incredible to see because when you really dive into the rugs, it tells a story of a people, and it tells a story of tribes and of the land, and they're old stories that have been passed down for generations. And I think for me, when I discovered that in that first visit that I took to these rural areas, these villages, I was just so amazed and intrigued, and really wanted to be able to share that story directly with folks here in the States.